Welcome to the art class.
I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're spending a weekend morning wandering through, like, a dusty estate auction in New Orleans.
Oh, I love those kinds of places.
Right. Tucked away among the mismatched furniture and all these forgotten heirlooms, you spot something. It's this old, heavily battered piece of wood with dark, peeling paint.
Sounds pretty unappealing, honestly.
Yeah, but you place a bid anyway, and you walk away with it for the price of, well, basically a mid-range laptop, $1,175.
Okay, a decent chunk of change, but nothing crazy.
Exactly. So you stash it away, figuring you might try to clean it up someday. Now, I want you to imagine finding out just 12 years later that this exact same piece of wood is worth more than the gross domestic product of a small island nation.
It is still just so hard to wrap my head around that timeline.
It's mind-blowing. In 2005, the auction catalog casually listed this painting as after Leonardo da Vinci, meaning it was considered, a later copy, maybe a forgery, or just a mediocre imitation.
Right, a workshop piece at best.
But fast forward to November 2017. We are inside the electric atmosphere of Christie's auction house in New York. The gavel comes down after 19 grueling minutes of bidding. And the painting is sold to a proxy for the Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman.
The final price on that was...
$450,312,500.
Yeah, and that very specific number at the end of the price tag, that is no accident.
Really?
Yeah. Going into that night, the previous auction record for any painting in human history was right around $450 million. So the buyer broke the all-time global record by a very deliberate, tiny fraction, just $312,500.
So it was just showing off, basically.
It was a calculated flex, a very public statement of absolute financial dominance on the world stage. But the central tension of this entire story, the thing that makes this so much more than just an incredibly expensive, like, real estate level transaction is this.
Okay, lay it on us.
Despite being the highest priced artwork ever sold, nobody universally agrees that Leonardo da Vinci actually painted it.
Which is wild.
And perhaps even more incredibly, nobody currently knows where the painting is.
It is completely vanished. So how exactly does a $1,000 piece of wood transform into a heavily disputed $500 million masterpiece?
That is the big question.
Right. And the answer lies not in the painting we can see with our naked eye, but in the microscopic layers hidden underneath it. So just to give you a mental picture of what we are dealing with here, the painting is called the Salvator Mundi, which translates to Savior of the World.
A very classic Renaissance motif.
Exactly. It's a devotional image depicting Jesus Christ looking directly at the viewer, holding a transparent crystal orb in his left hand, and his right hand is raised in a blessing.
And this was a hugely popular subject back then, right?
Oh, massively popular. And a master like Leonardo, he wasn't just sitting alone in a room painting every single commission himself. He ran a bustling studio.
Right, like a Renaissance factory.
Yeah, exactly. Because of this, dozens of workshop copies of the Salvator Mundi exist, mostly painted by his apprentices who were just, learning the trade. When this specific version surfaced in 2005, it was an absolute wreck.
It's completely ruined.
It was painted on a walnut panel that had split completely down the middle, and centuries of well-meaning but super clumsy restorers had slapped thick layers of crude overpaint and heavy yellowing varnish over the cracks, basically just to hold the image together.
Yeah, it was essentially buried alive under its own history.
Literally.
So the art dealers who bought it, they recognized that there might be something older beneath the grime, so they brought it to a highly respected conservator named Diane Dwyer Modestini. And her job was to meticulously remove those centuries of interference.
Which is not a quick process.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand how painstaking this process is. We're talking about using mild solvents, tiny cotton swabs, and surgical scalpels under microscopes for months on end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just lifting away ancient varnish without damaging the original pigment beneath it. And during this agonizingly slow excavation, Modestini discovered a pentimento.
Ah, the famous pentimento.
Exactly. Specifically, she saw that the position of Christ's right thumb, the hand raised in blessing, had originally been painted in a slightly different spot and then moved.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If you are looking at a painting, A pentimento, which comes from the Italian word for repentance or changing your mind, is like finding a famous author's rough manuscript in a dusty attic.
I like that analogy.
Like if you find a perfectly typed document with zero errors, it could just be a photocopy or a transcript someone typed out long after the fact.
Right, it's too clean.
But if you find a page covered in crossed-out sentences, margin notes, and scribbles, where the author clearly changed a character's name halfway through a paragraph, you instantly know you are holding the original creation. The presence of that repositioned thumb proved that this specific piece of wood contained an original composition. Whoever was holding the brush was working out the anatomy and the geometry in real time.
What's fascinating here is that that is the exact psychology of the artistic process. A copyist operates entirely differently.
How so?
Well, a copyist looks at a finished masterwork and tries to duplicate it exactly as it appears. They paint what they see. They don't have second thoughts about where a thumb goes because they aren't inventing the posture.
Right, they're just tracing an established map.
Exactly. So finding that pentimento was the holy grail for these dealers, it proved unequivocally that this was not a rote copy.
But wait, a pentimento just means the artist changed their mind. It proves it's an original composition, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to prove the guy holding the brush was actually Leonardo da Vinci.
That is true.
Like an apprentice or a studio assistant could easily change their mind about where to place a thumb while drafting a new painting, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And that is exactly the intellectual hurdle the dealers faced. Proving the painting was an original composition was only step one.
Right.
Step two was convincing the global art establishment that it was Leonardo's own hand making those changes. And doing that requires navigating this deeply complicated ecosystem where slow, methodical, scholarly research just collides with massive, earth-shattering financial incentives.
Because there's so much money on the line.
So much money. The dealers who bought this in New Orleans weren't amateurs. They were seasoned art specialists who knew exactly what a rediscovered Leonardo could be worth. So they quietly funded the restoration and spent years carefully building a scholarly case behind closed doors.
It was inviting high-profile experts to view the painting in private, getting opinions.
Yes, very hush-hush at first.
And this all culminated in 2011 when London's prestigious National Gallery made a deeply controversial decision. They decided to include the Salvator Mundi in a major blockbuster Leonardo exhibition.
And not as a maybe.
Right. They presented it not as a workshop piece, but as a genuine autograph work by Da Vinci himself.
Which is huge.
It's massive. You really have to look at the behind-the-scenes pressure of an institution like that. Museums are under immense pressure to draw crowds, secure funding, and maintain international prestige. Displaying a newly discovered Leonardo da Vinci is the ultimate museum trump card.
Oh, it guarantees lines around the block for months.
Exactly. But the internal debate over this was fierce. By putting it in their official exhibition catalog, the National Gallery essentially gave the painting their institutional gold star. They took it from a disputed, heavily restored piece of wood to an officially recognized masterpiece.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, once the National Gallery stamped it with their approval, Christie's auction house took that institutional credibility and weaponized it.
Oh, completely.
By the time 2017 rolled around, Christie's wasn't just selling a painting. They were selling an event. They marketed the Salvator Mundi with an aggressive brilliance that the art world had never really seen before.
Didn't they call it something specific?
Yeah, they literally branded it the male Mona Lisa.
Wow. No pressure there.
Right. And they didn't just show it to collectors in private rooms. They put it on a global tour, like a rock band, flying it to Hong Kong, San Francisco, London, and New York.
I remember seeing videos of this.
Oh yeah, they built these darkened exhibition rooms with dramatic theatrical spotlights and velvet ropes. They even hired an advertising agency to shoot slow-motion video of people weeping as they looked at it.
So, what does this all mean? If you step back and look at the mechanics of this, you see two entirely distinct worlds operating on conflicting timelines.
Definitely.
On one side, you have the academic world of art history, which is designed to move at a glacial pace. It relies on peer review, it is highly provisional, and scholars are perfectly comfortable leaving the attribution of a painting as unknown or disputed for decades.
They're never in a rush.
Right. But on the other side, you have the high-end art market. And the market moves at lightning speed. It's driven entirely by scarcity, by the fear of missing out, and by a compelling narrative.
And that narrative is what sold it.
Exactly. The $450 million price tag wasn't just paying for oil on wood. It was the result of a meticulously crafted story about a lost genius, a miraculous rediscovery, and the ultimate trophy for whoever had the immense wealth to claim it.
But the irony of the art world is that the higher the pedestal, the harsher the spotlight.
Yeah, the critics come out of the woodwork.
Exactly. The scholarly consensus that the dealers worked so hard to build in private began to violently fracture under the weight of a $500 million price tag. Once the gavel fell, devastating academic critiques began to emerge publicly.
And to understand why the academic world pushed back so hard, you really need to realize just how rare a genuine Leonardo da Vinci painting is. I mean, there are fewer than 20 paintings universally accepted to be by his hand in the entire world.
He was notoriously slow.
Very slow, easily distracted by his scientific pursuits, and he left a massive amount of his work completely unfinished. So, when an Oxford art historian named Matthew Landris analyzed the Salvator Mundi, he argued that Leonardo probably only painted somewhere between 5 to 20% of it.
Just a fraction of the canvas.
Right. He attributed the vast majority of the brushwork to one of Leonardo's primary studio assistants, a painter named Giovanni Antonio del Trafio.
And the critique gets much sharper than that.
Oh, it gets worse.
Oh, yeah. Frank Zollner, who's a highly regarded German Leonardo specialist, published a brutal assessment that strikes at the core of what the painting actually is today. He stated that the old original parts of the painting, like the base layers, were done by Leonardo's pupils.
Okay.
But the parts that actually look like Leonardo's signature style, Zollner argued those were painted by Diane Dwyer Modestini, the restorer.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because she didn't just clean it. When you strip away centuries of overpaint from a piece of walnut wood that has physically split in half, you are left with massive gaps where the original paint has completely flaked away. Modestini had to fill in those gaps.
She had to rebuild it, essentially.
Yes, she had to reconstruct the face, she had to repaint portions of the intricate curls of hair, and she had to try to replicate Leonardo's famous sfumato technique, that incredibly difficult, smoky, seamless blending of light and shadow.
Which is almost impossible to get right.
Exactly. So the boundary between conserving a 500-year-old painting and actively creating a new one becomes very blurry.
Precisely. And this is the danger of heavy restoration. If the very elements that experts point to as proof of Leonardo's genius, the softness of the face, the delicate transitions in the hair, are actually modern layers of synthetic paint applied in the 2000s, then the attribution just collapses.
Which implies that the Saudi crown prince didn't buy a Renaissance masterpiece at all. He essentially bought a 20th century restoration. Like, he paid $500 million for Diane Modestini's modern interpretation of a ruined workshop copy.
It is the ultimate nightmare for any art collector. But beyond the debate over the brushwork and the restoration, there is a fundamental structural anomaly in the painting itself that has severely divided the scientific community.
Right, the orb.
Yeah, it revolves around the transparent crystal orb in Christ's hand. You have to remember that Leonardo da Vinci was not just an artist. He was one of the foremost scientific minds of his era, and he was absolutely obsessed with optics.
He studied it constantly.
Yes. He filled thousands of pages in his notebooks with precise mathematical observations about how light passes through curved glass and transparent objects.
Right. If you've ever looked at a straw resting in a glass of water, you know exactly what we were talking about. The straw looks broken or bent at the waterline because the liquid bends the light.
Exactly. Refraction.
A solid crystal sphere is essentially a heavy magnifying glass. If you hold it up, it should wildly distort the robes behind it. It should refract the light, and physics dictates that it should actually invert the background upside down.
But if you look at the orb in the Salvator Mundi, it does absolutely none of that.
Nothing.
It acts like a completely flat, empty window pane. The fabric behind it flows perfectly straight through the glass. It is scientifically and physically incorrect.
Which has split the academic community into two defensible yet entirely opposing camps.
Yeah. One side points to this optical failure and says, look, this is the ultimate proof that a master of optics couldn't possibly have painted it. It must be an apprentice who simply didn't understand the complex physics of light refraction.
Which makes sense, but what about the other camp?
The other camp argues the exact opposite. They say Leonardo knew exactly how light worked, but he made a deliberate, highly calculated artistic choice to paint it incorrectly.
As a symbol.
Exactly. By explicitly defying the physical laws of nature, he was signaling to the viewer that the orb was a miraculous, divine object, unbound by earthly physics.
I mean, both positions make logical sense, but neither can be definitively proven just by looking at photographs. And this intense, boiling debate was supposed to finally be settled in a very public way, right?
It was.
In 2018, the Louvre in Paris, the home of the Mona Lisa and basically the ultimate authority on Da Vinci, was hosting a massive, once-in-a-lifetime retrospective to mark the 500th anniversary of the artist's death.
The biggest stage possible.
Yes. And the Salvator Mundi was scheduled to be the crown jewel of that exhibition. But it never made it to the museum wall.
The negotiations broke down in a spectacular fashion.
What happened?
Well, the Saudi Cultural Authority reportedly demanded that the Salvator Mundi be hung directly next to the Mona Lisa. They wanted absolute visual equity to cement their painting status.
Wow.
Yeah, but the Louvre declined. Now, the official public reasons cited logistical challenges and security concerns, which, is a convenient excuse when dealing with an asset of that value.
Oh, sure.
But multiple internal reports indicated that the Louvre's curators had conducted their own scientific analysis and had deep, serious reservations about the attribution. They were reportedly unwilling to display it as a 100% autographed Leonardo.
And as a result of this standoff, the painting was packed up and sent back to Saudi Arabia. It was not exhibited, and it actually hasn't been seen by the public since 2020.
Just gone.
Yeah, the current reports suggest it is hidden away in a climate-controlled private vault, or perhaps hanging securely on a billionaire's superyacht.
This raises an important question, though. With all those power dynamics at play, why didn't the experts at the Louvre simply publish their findings and state publicly, "We don't think this is a Leonardo"?
Yeah, why the silence?
The answer is that at this stratosphere of wealth, art ceases to be just art. It becomes a geopolitical status symbol and a highly sensitive diplomatic instrument.
No, I see.
The Louvre, as a state-sponsored institution of France, could not publicly denounce the authenticity of the painting without directly embarrassing the Saudi crown prince and triggering a massive international incident over a foreign government's $500 million cultural asset.
So their silence was really the only diplomatic route available.
Exactly.
And the tragic irony for you, the listener, who just wants to know the actual truth of the mystery, is that the scientific world possesses the exact tools to solve this right now.
Oh, you definitely have the tech.
Think about Operation Nightwatch, which we've discussed in previous deep dives. In that project, researchers essentially fired lasers and used advanced imaging to map every single microscopic layer of Rembrandt's canvas. We could use those exact same tools on the Salvator Mundi.
It would be incredible to see.
Right. With X-ray fluorescence, scientists don't just look at the surface, they shoot X-rays directly into the wood. Different historical pigments bounce those X-rays back at different frequencies, allowing us to map the exact chemical makeup of layers we can't even see with the naked eye.
Unbelievable.
We could use multispectral imaging to look cleanly beneath Diane Modestini's modern restoration paint and see exactly what the original artist's brushstrokes look like.
We could literally map the painting atom by atom. But the scientific method requires physical access, and geopolitics has firmly denied that access.
Which is so frustrating.
It is. The Salvator Mundi stopped being an art historical question the moment the auction gavel came down in New York. It became a hostage to its own staggering price tag. The financial gravity surrounding a $500 million asset is just so immensely strong that it warps the truth around it.
So as we wrap up this incredible journey, we have tracked a battered split piece of walnut wood from a $1,000 estate auction in New Orleans through the pressure cookers of the National Gallery in Christie's, all the way to a hidden vault in the Middle East.
Quite the trip.
It is a story that brilliantly exposes the deep limitations of artistic attribution, and it shows us just how incredibly fragile institutional credibility becomes when it finds itself on a direct collision course with geopolitical power.
It also serves as a testament to the fact that sometimes the mystery itself is far more compelling than paint on the wood. I mean, this object generates far more questions, far more heated academic debate, and far more global intrigue hidden away in a billionaire's box than it ever did sitting out in the open.
Which leaves you with a final lingering thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. If the Salvator Mundi remains locked in that vault forever, never to be tested by modern science, never to be seen by the public again, does it even really matter anymore who actually painted it in the 1500s?
That's a great question.
Perhaps the Salvator Mundi has ceased to be a Renaissance artifact altogether. Maybe it has transformed into the ultimate piece of 21st century conceptual art. A $450 million monument not to Leonardo da Vinci's genius, but to the unstoppable power of human desire, the immense weight of extreme wealth, and the stories we collectively choose to believe.